Good evening, fellow writers and friends. Welcome to the July 2022 edition of the Author Showcase Series, a virtual experience hosted by the South Florida Writers Association, whose mission is to support literary arts and writers. Tonight, the spotlight is on author and public relations professional David Pearson, presenting his second book, Upon a Peak in Darien, a novella that is a coming-of-age story of Baker Murray, an 18-year-old boy, and his summer job playing piano and singing in a Vermont resort while navigating a minefield of often hysterical situations involving a German baroness, two gay antique dealers, and a set of twin sisters, each of whom Baker pursues separately with disastrous results. Readers will identify with the comic missteps and adventures of a young man searching for romance, friendship, and the meaning of life. Folks, I invite you to stay until the end of this video as the author will play the piano as a treat to his viewers. Now, the author is president of David Pearson Associates, a marketing and public relations firm that has built its reputation over the last 40 years in the promotion of high-quality resort, vacation homes, and club communities from Florida to Hawaii and in the Caribbean. He served as advisor, writer, and strategist on several political campaigns and provided counsel to former U.S. Senator Bob Graham in his races for Florida governor and for the Senate. Pearson served with United Press International and graduated with a BA in History from Emory University. He served as Deputy Director of Information, the Peace Corps, under Sergeant Shriver in the administration of President John F. Kennedy. He's also the author of JFK and Bobby, Arnie and Jack, and David, a memoir about his career in public relations, starting with his being in the White House the night of November 22nd, 1963, when President John F. Kennedy died, to the Peace Corps and early civil rights days, and to owning his own public relations firm. David is married to Ann Stewart Bates, and they have three children, Christopher, Margaret, and Catherine. The Pearsons live right here in Coral Gables, Florida. Friends, fellow writers, how about a round of applause for author David Pearson discussing his book, Upon a Peak in Darien.
This is David Pearson, and it's my pleasure to be able to read for you and talk to you a little bit about writing today. I know you're all writers, so it'll be fun to do. Starting out, Evelyn has already told you about my background, so I don't have to go into that. But when I came back to Miami after my government time, I started my firm. I only had one client, so I had to make some money. So I did some freelance writing. And I did that for several years. I'll show you some of the publications that I wrote for. I wrote stories in the Miami Herald. I wrote for my university alumni magazine. I wrote for the major one I wrote, starting me out nationally, was Esquire. I wrote a major article about golf course architecture, and that kind of got me into golf, started my reputation in golf. And then I started writing about people in golf. Jack Nicklaus, I wrote this for in Tropic. You remember Tropic, the Herald used to have. And then I started writing tennis. I wrote this for Tennis Magazine, and so forth. So a little bit about how I, just for those of you who are doing or would like to do freelance writing, here's how I wrote those things. I would constantly take notes and come back and put it into the computer willy-nilly, just without any particular outline, just notes on everything. The story I wrote on Jack Nicklaus, when I went up to Palm Beach to meet him, I took notes on our conversation. I took notes coming back on my portable microphone. And then when I got enough, I typed it all out. And I didn't have a computer at that point in my life. I just typed it out, printed the papers, printed all the pages out, put them on my bed, and then I shuffled them all around into order to make it the article. Now, one of the things I learned at UPI about lead writing, if you can't think of a good lead when you start, don't worry about it. Just go ahead and start writing the article. And somewhere, as you're writing it, the lead will come to you. And that's what happened with all these articles. I didn't have a lead when I started. It popped up and I found it. The same thing with the title of the story. As I was writing it, it came to me and I picked up the title. So those were the freelance days. And then what happened was I became too successful, and the editors of the major publications would say, don't you handle rock resorts, or don't you represent the Boca Raton Hotel and Club? I said, yes. Well, you can't do an article about them then. So that was the end of my freelance career, because they realized that I was representing some of the people that I was writing about. However, it was great practice and a great way to learn how to write. Now, after I had my career in public relations for about 50 years here in South Miami and Coral Gables, and until about 2015, you may remember there was a big crash about 2008 or 9, and my clients began drifting away. So my last client was Huntsman Springs out in Idaho, owned resort development, golf, skiing, and real estate, owned by John Huntsman, the billionaire. It was my last client, and Mr. Huntsman died. They sold the project, and I decided at that point to close my firm. So I closed it up and let everybody go. And then suddenly I found myself with all this time. So I said, okay, well, let me do some pro bono work. I've always been a conservationist. So I started doing pro bono PR work for the Audubon Society, Shake a Leg Miami, works with crippled children. And I still had too much time. So I said, well, let me try to write a book. So people had said to me for years, when I told them stories about things in my career or about the John F. Kennedy days and LBJ, why don't you write that? Why don't you write a book? Why don't you write a book? So I decided I'd write a memoir. So I wrote a book called JFK and Bobby, Arnie and Jack, and David. It says, The Unusual PR Career of David Pearson. Okay, this book is basically a memoir of my whole writing career. Like before COVID, Mitch Kaplan let me do a reading at Books and Books, Coral Gables, and it was a big success. And I sold like 60 books that first day, and it's still available down there. So that was my first book. And since it was so successful, I decided that I might go ahead and write another book. But I didn't want to write another memoir because I'd already written one. So I decided to write what is called a roman à clef. Now, for those of you who don't know what that means, roman à clef is basically a fictional book that is based in large part on the life of the writer, of the author, semi-autobiographical. So this book that I'm going to read from today, Upon a Peak in Darien, I assume you can see it. There's something blocking my view here. I can't see this, but I assume you all can see it. Was based on a summer job that I had in Manchester, Vermont, when I was in my teens. I was 18. And I got a job up there playing the piano and singing in a resort hotel. And it was a lot of fun and a lot of things happened. So I figured, well, go ahead and see if you can see how far it goes. Well, it went so far as to be a novella. It's a short novel, it's what it is. It has a beginning, middle, and an ending. And the way I wrote it was the same kind of way that I wrote the freelance articles. I would think of something that happened, and I would write about that particular event. It might be literally correct, or it might be something that I added my imagination to. Both something that was true and something that I made up. Hence, roman à clef. So before I knew it, I had written a book, and I then found out, I learned that I could publish this book free without any cost through Kindle, Amazon Kindle Publishing. Amazon Kindle Publishing. You can look it up. They have a website. You go there and it'll ask you, would you like to publish a book? And you could go on from there. It costs nothing. The only thing I had to pay for was the cover design and the back cover design. And the same art director who did that laid out all the pages and the type and so forth. So we gave a camera ready book to Amazon Kindle and they published it. Then the next thing, of course, that you do is you immediately get a copy to Mitchell Kaplan. So Mitch will either let you have a reading online, which he did for a number of people, or I guess if COVID is gone by the time you write the book, maybe he'll let you do a reading at the Books and Books, one of his several stores. And then he'll keep the book in stock, which is where he has it now. So that's how I happened to write that. And those are just a few tips for those of you who might be interested in doing the same thing. Now, I think I'll go ahead and read a couple of chapters from the book. And then I have a surprise for you. At the end of my reading, I have a little coda, a little surprise. And remember, I told you this book is about a young man who played the piano and sang. So you'll see what's going to come up after a few minutes. All right, the book starts out, The Baroness, Chapter 1. Baker stood by the front desk waiting. Even though it was 11 on a bright Vermont morning, The lobby light was dim and opaque, creating a musty Victorian feeling in the tiny Middersill Inn. The stillness only added to Baker's anxiety as the minutes ticked by. He worried that his mother's white suitcase would make him look like a kid. A door opened and a tall, blue-eyed woman walked in. She wore a severely tailored blouse and her blonde hair was pulled back into a bun. She spoke to Baker in a German accent. "Come over here, please." She pointed to a cluster of antique couches in the far corner of the lobby. "Yes, you are looking for a summer job? Have you any hotel or resort experience?" Her words were clipped. Her voice was vaguely menacing. "Well, in a way," he answered. "I live in Miami and I've been around resorts all my life and I played piano and sung in hotels." "I see. How old are you?" I'm in college. I'm 18. "Are you Jewish?" "Would it help if I were?" "I think you are. Are you?" "Do I look like it?" "You may be the first person I ever fired before hiring them." "What is your name?" "Baker Murray." "Your manner borders on insolence, young man, but I will chalk that up to living among so many of those Jews in Miami. In any case, you will not be seeing many of our guests who are from the finest families in the East. We will try you as our night desk clerk, and you will shift. Your shift is from midnight to 8 in the morning. You will sleep in a dormitory and back and eat with the staff in the kitchen. Your salary will be $40 a week." "Sounds good. What do I do, Mrs. I don't believe I got your name." "My name is Baroness von Schlaffen. You will man the desk, work the switchboard, and most important of all, take time clock around the inn and punch it in the various stations every hour. If you sleep, you are fired." Baker walked up to a punching station on the third floor at the end of the hall. His time clock was slung around his neck. He looked for a place to put out his cigarette so he could have both hands free for the necessary punching operation. Finding none, he placed the cigarette on top of an ancient radiator and, turning to the chore, realized the clock said 15 minutes to 3. He was early. To wait for 15 minutes in the musty corridor, or yes, that's right, move the clock dial to 3 and punch it in. When he finished the operation, the cigarette was burning down to the butt, so Baker picked it up and took off running down the stairs into the lobby, reaching for an ashtray just as the embers were warming his fingers. He stubbed it out, sat in one of the old easy chairs to wait another 45 minutes and resume his rounds. When he woke up and looked at the clock, it said 4:18. First, he panicked. Then he remembered the turning ahead, turning back trick. He moved the hands back to 4 and then got up and made the hotel rounds, punching the clock at all the stations. He then set it at 5, repeated the whole procedure, speeding through the dim hallways and up and down the creaking stairs and finishing up just at dawn to the sound of birds and the vague smell of hay wafting through the open windows. Fully awake now, he made the 6 and 7 o'clock rounds without event. At 7:30, Baroness von Schlaffen entered the lobby, walked over to the front desk behind which Baker was sitting, perched on a high stool like a stooping stork. "Yes, Mr. Murray, Please let me see your time clock. Yes, ma'am. Here it is. Sure was a long night. The woman pulled a small key from her pocket, inserted it into the back of the time clock, opened the clock, and pulled out a round card with holes punched around its circumference. The holes were positioned erratically, except for those at the top, which were all even and equal. "Ah, so, just what I expected," she said with a thin smile. "You Jews will always find a way to get around the rules. But this time you have outsmarted yourself. What did I do wrong? You know very well what you did, you smart aleck. Look at this card. You slept all night and set the clock hand back and forward. What you didn't know was that the clock moves correctly and does not deviate when you move the hands. See all these holes close together? You punched about 3 hours worth in less than an hour. Also, I heard you running up and down the hall in the middle of the night." Baker got slowly down from the stool, smiling. "Curses, foiled again," he muttered to himself. "Yes, Mr. Murray, please get your things and move along. We will assume your dinner would balance your actual 2 hours of work last night. Good day." As Baker strolled down the shady sidewalks of Manchester, still sleepy and languorous from the night before, he wondered what the hell had happened to his plans for a marvelous summer in a Vermont resort. The fancy guests he would meet, daughters in Lord and Taylor shirtwaist dresses, waiting to be wooed in the dense fir forests, the tips, the tennis on days off, the whole 9 yards unraveling before his eyes as he wandered aimlessly through the town with his mother's white suitcase on the 20th day of June, 1956. Why Vermont? I'm running out of time. Okay, well, that's about all I can read right now. I'm going to go over and give you a surprise. Here comes a surprise. Bear with me while I move this camera. Teach me tonight.